Hello and welcome to Wineskins, a program featuring reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda. Our show is sponsored by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our show today, I will interview Detective Delphine Baldwin-Casey on child sexual abuse. We will also hear more about the life of St. Andrew and the readings for this feast of Jesus Christ, King of the Universe. That and more on Wineskins. Catholic Charities is an important part of the life of the Church and her members. To share with us an important issue is Jennifer Lucarelli.
I would like to begin today by asking you to take a moment to reflect on a very personal question. What kind of a giver are you? Ask yourself these questions regarding your attitude toward past giving to help determine your future path. Am I a cheerful giver or a grudging one? Do I give generously, minimally, or not at all? Do I give freely, or am I hesitant to give to those in need? Do I truly feel blessed whenever I give, or do I have resentment? Do I often find reasons not to give? Whatever your answers are to these questions, the concept of giving in today's culture, unfortunately, is often perceived as an obligatory transaction, especially during the holidays. I got you something, you got me something. Hopefully we spent about the same amount of money so no one feels awkward. That sort of thing. We all know that panicked feeling when a friend shows up at our door in December with a wrapped package in hand and we realize we don't have anything for them. Add to this the stress of finding the time, money, and energy required to select that perfect gift for each person on our shopping list, and the true meaning of the season becomes more of a burden rather than a joy. However, there is a better way. When you give freely with no expectation of anything in return, you open yourself up to freedom and grace in your giving. Your gift becomes intentional and spiritual, as opposed to an afterthought or simply an obligation to be fulfilled. This form of selfless giving is reflected over and over in the Bible. We need only remember and reflect to bring the true spirit of giving back to mind. In Matthew's Gospel, we find the 3 wise men with their gifts for Jesus. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These valuable gifts are suitable for a king, but they are not what Jesus desires from us. What he wants from us are simple gifts, given with a sincere and humble heart for the benefit of others. Each year from November 1st through December 31st, Catholic Charities sponsors our annual season of giving. We implemented this idea about 4 years ago as a way to engage our fellow and faithful Catholic families during a time of such blessings for some, but heavy burdens for others. We wanted to be a part of a bigger whole, and wanted to give you a way also to be a part of something bigger too. During this time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, many of you listening today and others throughout the community are inspired to share their blessings with those in need by making financial contributions that will help the poor in our local communities. Catholic Charities is forever grateful to be the recipient of many of these seasonal and sacrificial gifts, which enable us to make the holidays brighter for families who struggle just to make ends meet. What if this year, instead of focusing on presents, we choose to focus on something that will last, on something that will bring us a deeper fulfillment? What if we all gave a gift from a more grateful heart? What if we choose to sacrifice a bit more, either financially or with our time by volunteering at a soup kitchen or visiting with elderly? What if, instead of spending untold amounts of money on gifts for ourselves and our families, we ask our friends and loved ones to donate to a good cause, to help others in need? What if? Jesus said, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." In giving of ourselves to others, we are letting Christ reach into our hearts and offer a fulfillment such as only He can give. I hope today that I have given you some ideas to reflect upon, and time to refresh and renew your spirit as we approach this annual season of giving. If I can convince just one person to give from a more grateful heart, then I will consider myself blessed. If you have been so moved, Catholic Charities offers a variety of ways that you can get involved and give back to those who need us most. Pray for all those in need in our community, in our diocese, and in our country. Volunteer your time and talents to various projects and events throughout the year. Give. Search your heart to find the answer regarding what gift is appropriate in your life and situation. Various options are available online. Read our semi-annual newsletter in November to see the good news happening at Catholic Charities. Open your email. We send various email updates about news and events throughout the year so you can see the difference you create. Please visit our website at www.ccdoy.org for details about the season of giving or any of our ministries and services. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest too. Thank you so much for your support, not only during the season of giving, but throughout the entire year. For Wineskins, I'm Jennifer Lucarelli.
The Feast of St. Andrew is celebrated on Saturday. To tell us more about this first apostle is Pam Pasquale. She is from St. Charles Church in Boardman.
The feast in honor of St. Andrew has been celebrated on November 30th since the beginning of the 5th century, according to the Jerusalem calendar. Around the year 470, a church was dedicated to him in Rome near St. Mary Major because he was the brother of Peter. He had been a follower of John the Baptist and was the first of the apostles to follow Christ. In fact, it was he who led his brother Peter to Christ. For that reason, the Greeks called him the Protoclete, or first called. Tradition says that he preached the gospel in Greece and in the year 60 was crucified in Patras on an X-shaped cross known as St. Andrew's Cross. His relics were transferred to Constantinople in 357 and later to Amalfi, Italy in 1208. But his skull was sent to Rome in 1462. In 1964, as an ecumenical gesture, his relics were returned to Patras in Greece. There is a great devotion to him in the Byzantine Church. He is patron of Russia and Scotland. The texts for the Mass use the scarce details about St. Andrew that are found in the New Testament. The entrance antiphon and communion antiphon of the Mass refer to his vocation to follow Christ. The opening prayer, taken from the Gregorian Sacramentary, states that St. Andrew was called to preach the gospel and guide your church in faith. At the very outset, he made his confession of faith when he said to Peter, "We have found the Messiah." Moreover, we read that Andrew left his fishing nets at once and followed Christ. Finally, in the prayer after communion, we make a reference to the suffering of St. Andrew, asking that we follow his example by sharing in Christ's suffering, living with him forever in glory. He was closely associated with Christ, and for that reason, Philip asked Andrew to speak to Christ about some Greeks who wanted to see him. The relevance of this feast is found in the Office of Readings, where St. John Chrysostom says, "After Andrew had stayed with Jesus and had learned much from him, he did not keep this treasure to himself, but hastened to share it with his brother." We today are called to share our faith with others in order to build up the mystical body of Christ. The opening prayer says, "Lord, in your kindness, hear our petitions." You called Andrew the apostle to preach the gospel and to guide your church in faith. May he always be our friend in your presence to help us with his prayers. For Wineskins, I'm Pam Pasquale.
Welcome back to our show, Promise to Protect, Pledge to Heal. Joining me again is Delphine Baldwin-Casey. Welcome back to our show.
Thank you.
In our other segment that we had talked about at a previous show, you really gave us some good information on allegations and credibility and the sensitivity of the whole issue that we're discussing. I think now we'd like to talk about some of those kind of nuts and bolts of what actually is required by the state of Ohio, but also what the diocese is actually doing in processing some of these allegations and how it becomes, unfortunately, credible in some instances. So let's talk about the state of Ohio and some of their codes and mandates when we're talking about sexual abuse of minors.
One of the codes, there is a section for mandated reporters. Okay. So a lot of times I get phone calls from people who are mandated reporters, and they want to know what is their responsibility, sometimes other than calling children's services or the police or jobs and family service. They want to know additional information, what they can do. A lot of times there's questions that there's a way that you need to ask a child about the abuse if they report it to you, and sometimes I give them specifics on that, but I do remind them that as mandated reporters, they do have to call the civil authorities.
And I think that's one thing we want to really impress upon people in the church, because for us as church, it's important not to keep that information to ourselves, but to contact the authorities and to contact the diocese.
Absolutely. Sometimes I have people that work with children and they'll call me and they'll say, I already called the priest, because they don't know. You have to go beyond that. You know, you have to pick up the phone, you have to call children's services, you have to make that report. And of course, whatever policies and other things that you have in church, of course I encourage you to follow it. You do have an obligation as a mandated reporter.
Let's say that you get a call from someone about an abuse situation. What are the steps that you take personally insofar as working for the diocese?
If it is within the diocese in my jurisdiction, once again, if it's abuse, the child has reported to you, you report that. But also in reporting it to me, I take a report from you. There's an actual form that I want you to fill out and I want you to send to me. And what I do is follow up to make sure that the necessary steps were taken when you are reporting this abuse. And then if there is perpetrator or someone that's known, then that's where my job begins as the investigator, to call this person in. I need to talk to both sides and to find out what happened. And that's if it's someone within the diocese, which could be the priest, a parishioner, someone that works in maintenance, anyone that works in the diocese. If there's a complaint, then part of my responsibility would be to talk to that person also.
In this day and age of litigation, which is somewhat rampant sometimes, unfortunately, but yet necessary, how do you distinguish then in order to protect those who are actually innocent? How do you do that? How do you kind of assuage that information to keep it as confidential as possible so everyone is protected to the best of your ability?
Well, the one thing I think I like to pride myself with my reputation, all the years that I've worked with victims, confidentiality is so important to me. I've never been in a position where I give that up. So if someone tells me something in confidence, it remains that. If I need to release information, being trained, there's a way that I could do it where I'm not revealing that person or where it came from. Interviewing, being a good listener, all right? Just putting the facts together. And you have to be patient. Sometimes there'll be a case on my desk and I'll get a call. Well, we need this right away. No, we can't rush this, okay? You need me to get to the facts. You need the truth, all right? Because I have to make sure that if this victim files a complaint, it's credible. But at the same time, all right, in my 30 years on the Youngstown Police Department, I've never sent anyone to jail or prison, and I knew they did not commit the crime. And sometimes I'm not able to reveal everything that I know, but that's part of the investigation.
Sure. Let's talk about the review board. We know that the diocese has what they call a review board for sexual abuse reporting. What's the makeup of that, and what is their role?
Well, the review board is very interesting, and I don't know if you knew that I served on that review board for 8 years. If there's an allegation made against the priest, the bishop will usually bring it to the review board. The review board is made up of a parishioner in the church, attorneys, someone such as myself, a police officer, doctors, other ministers from other denominations. And the case is brought before the board, and we discuss it, and that's where we come to a decision. Is this case credible or is it not? If the case is credible, then we advise the bishop of that. And then from there, the bishop decides what other action needs to be taken.
This process, and we want to say that it is a process, so it's not kind of a slam dunk that all of a sudden you're guilty or you're not guilty, but there's time and energy, and also, I love that word, listening, listening to people and getting all of the facts, because it's really important when we're talking about something so sensitive as clergy sexual abuse. Let's talk about that sense of liability. Why do we have to keep that sense of liability in front of our minds just to make sure that we are just and honest and transparent?
There's a lot of reason. I mean, because of course, you know, attorneys come into play when these cases come to light. People can be sued. Their character can be attacked or destroyed, you know, whether I'm talking about victim or priest. And so you always have to realize that and just keep that in mind every time you do a case. There's always these steps that come into play, and you have to be mindful of them and what you're doing.
Sure. No. And we'd like to close out by letting the folks that are with us know that if there is an allegation to be made, they can contact the diocese at 330-744-8451.
Absolutely, and my extension is 239.
Delphine Baldwin-Casey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And again, thank you for your fine and wonderful work.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you. To receive more information and to listen to Wineskins, visit the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown at www.doi.org. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Mark Quinn. As I grew up on the south side of Chicago, the Dominican Sisters of Springfield not only taught me, but formed me in my Catholic faith. I owe them so much. That's why I make an annual donation to the Retirement Fund for Religious. Do you remember the religious men and women who shaped your life? Say thank you to them by donating to the Retirement Fund for Religious at your local parish. Join me. Share in the care.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. But she's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
Many sisters, brothers, and religious order priests served for little pay, and now their communities lack retirement funds.
I spent 34 years as a teacher.
I just loved interacting with the students.
Gifts to the Retirement Fund for Religious help provide for medications, nursing care, and more. An annual collection is held in parishes across the nation.
I always remember you in my prayers.
Please give to those who have given a lifetime. Visit retiredreligious.org.
Our song today is by Christina Parthemer and Colleen and Hannah Heldreth. It is from their CD entitled Worship the Lord.
I love to tell how Jesus saved my soul. Such
And now I'll share some reflections on the feast and solemnity of Jesus Christ, the King of the universe. In the movie musical Camelot, we see King Arthur trying to convince the Lady Guinevere to remain in Camelot. And to help convince her, he described Camelot as the most perfect place anywhere. He says, "A law was made a distant moon ago. July and August cannot be too hot. And there's a legal limit to the snow here. In Camelot, the winter is forbidden until December. By order, the summer lingers through September. The rain may never fall until after sundown. In short, there's simply not a more congenial spot or happily ever aftering than here in Camelot." Yes, Camelot sounds like a nice place to be, a place where we could live happily ever after. But it is a world of make-believe, and we know there is really no place like Camelot or king like Arthur who can regulate even the climate and make everything so perfect that we would not need a thing and all our problems would be taken care of. But at the same time, today we celebrate the fact that we do belong to a kingdom that is not totally unlike Camelot in what it promises us. The difference between the kingdom of God to which we belong and Camelot is that Christ's kingdom is a reality. It is present among us now, and the life it promises does not belong to a dream or world of make-believe. The feast we celebrate today, the Feast of Christ the King, tells us we do not need fairy tales like Camelot to make us happy. Our happiness, our fulfillment, is found in that simple King who died on the cross, and in doing so, took upon himself our suffering and made us members of his kingdom. Through baptism, we enter into a unique relationship with Jesus. We are somehow changed that we no longer live for ourselves, but for him, who we make king in our lives. When we say he is king, we mean that there is no one or nothing greater than him. He is number one. All that we do should be directed towards him, for the strength that we need flows from him. The baptism that gives us his special relationship with Christ the King makes us special sharers of his suffering as well. It is in our suffering that perhaps we find our greatest bond with Christ. I'm sure that none of us has to look too far to find suffering in our own lives, whether it's loneliness, sickness, death, financial problems, broken marriages, children who are in trouble are but a few. It is no exaggeration to say that we have our share of problems, and it is not enough to ignore them in the hope that they will go away. We have to deal with our problems as they come up and try to find some solutions. Maybe our loneliness will lead us to find new friends. Maybe the death of a relative or friend brings us closer to someone else. Maybe helping out our children helps us appreciate how much they really mean to us. Our faith is not a fairy tale of happily ever aftering like Camelot, but it is faith in the kingdom which is as real as it can possibly be. Yes, Christ is King in heaven, and one day we shall see him face to face, but let us not fail to acknowledge him as King now, when we need him most. After all, if we do not make him king in our lives now, heaven for us may be nothing more than a dream. It may be nothing but another Camelot. For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. This feast of Christ the King teaches us that service is the test of true greatness, that love is stronger than hate, that our sins will always be forgiven no matter what, and that we look forward to that day when God will be all in all. Wineskins is made possible by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. The program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda, wishing you a blessed Sunday, a safe week, and we of CTNY wish you and your family a blessed and bountiful Thanksgiving.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. She's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.